Hello, my name's Kevin, and I am referred to as Knowledge on the storage forums. For this video, I'm going to be walking you through setting up a node on Windows. This is pretty straightforward. It is not meant to be exhaustive, but what I am going to do is I'm going to walk you through the same process that I'm going through. So if I run into any issues along the way, you'll see how I troubleshoot those issues, and you'll see how I do a complete setup, minus a couple things that I'll talk about where you can find more information elsewhere, but everything else will be very straightforward. And at the end, we'll have a fully working node. Hopefully, you'll have set up as well as myself. Now, if you have any problems setting up your node and it's not answered here, I do recommend that you go to storj.io, storj.io, and /forum. And you can then join our forum if you're not already and talk to many of the people there that will be able to give you assistance in setting up the node and helping you troubleshoot. Because the team there is excellent and a fantastic resource. You can also email me, knowledge@storj.io, and I'll either attempt to help you or forward you to the forum where you can get very quick and very accurate help. Hopefully, though, this is going to be pretty straightforward and you won't need a lot of help, but of course you may have questions after you have everything set up, and you can either find that assistance on the forum or in the various locations of documentation that we'll go through while we're working through this setup. Okay, so I am now at the storage website. That's storj.io, and you'll see, excuse me, on the left, an option for host a node. So we're going to go ahead and click on become a host. Excuse me. Don't worry, I don't have the COVID virus. I just have a little bit of a scrog in my throat today. So you need to make sure that you have these requirements, and it will check to make sure that you have 500 gigabytes of available disk space when you go to set up your node. So you want to make sure that you're not just going through the motions here and saying that you have all of these things without checking, because it will not let you proceed if you do not have the requirements. So in this case, I know I do. I'm going to go ahead and click off everything, and I'm going to hit continue. And now it's going to ask for my email, and it's going to send me an authorization token to that email. Now, one thing I want to note here is that if you go ahead and put in your email address, like I'm going to now, you want to make sure that your ad blockers are not running, because for some reason, cannot type today, but for some reason, the ad blocker will block the token from getting sent to you. You can just turn it off momentarily, hit the continue button here, and then receive your email, turn your ad blocker back on. Okay. Now I'm going to check my email. You should get this in about 10 minutes, within 10 minutes. So go ahead and check, and then we'll meet right back here. Okay, hopefully by now you have your email open and you found your authorization token. Do check your spam folder if you didn't get it. But again, it should take a little less than 10 minutes, depending on where you are in the world, to receive your email. So let's move forward and click on the storage node docs. Okay, so we received the authorization token. We've done that. Let's see if that gives us an example of what it looks like. This is the example that you should have received in your email. Of course, yours will look different. It'll contain your email and all of the alpha, numeric, upper, lower that you see here. Okay, so we'll move on then to the prerequisites. And we've already done that part. Now it does kind of mention here power supply. What they're really talking about here is, an uninterrupted power supply, UPS. the storage node is pretty resilient in the sense that if it loses power, it's probably not going to get corrupted. But there is data and databases in there. It is reading and writing, and of course, just dropping power on anything like that can cause corruption. And so, ideally, if you're in an area that experiences a lot of brownouts, or just straight up power loss, it's a good idea to have a UPS that can keep your node online and potentially go through a graceful shutdown of your system so that data is not corrupted while you're experiencing your power event. If you do end up with corruption, it can be problematic to repair it. And we do provide some guidance on that, but ultimately you want to try to keep your node running, in the most ideal circumstances by making sure that the power just doesn't just cut whenever. So let's move forward. This is just a reminder not to connect your computer directly to the internet without using a firewall. Some people, when they're setting up port forwarding on their system, which is our next step, they find that they have a lot of difficulty setting it up in their router. They then decide to just, hey, I'm going to go ahead and connect my computer directly to the internet. Some ISPs actually allow them to do this. That's a bad idea in general. You're basically exposing your computer to all of the internet traffic that normally your router provides a hardware level firewall against. And, it's going to get really beat up, and potentially there's a lot of room there to get your machine hacked. So this is just a reminder, don't do that. You definitely want to go through the port forwarding process. If you've never done it before, it's a good learning experience because there's a lot of things that when you're trying to run your computer as a server, for instance, if you wanted to be like a gaming server, or if you wanted to be like a web type of server, or anything of that nature, it's a good idea to understand port forwarding and how to set it up. It's not difficult, and we'll cover it a little bit here in our next step. So, in order to use a storage node, you either have to have a static IP address, which is a permanent fixed IP address that does not change to your router. Typically, not always, but typically, you do not have one. You usually have to purchase one. If you're in a business, you may have one. But your average home internet user, the ISP is typically giving you a number that will change at some time. It varies. It could be once every 24 hours. It could be once a week. But you need to get one that doesn't change. And if your ISP is giving you a dynamic IP, that's okay. You can use one of the many dynamic hosts that provide a domain name that you can use to assign to your IP, and you run a little client on your computer that keeps the domain name and the dynamic IP in sync. We recommend using NoIP.com. They let you do it every 30 days for free. You do have to renew it every 30 days, but it's 30 days for free. Or if you pay them a small fee, you can get a permanent without having to renew it every 30 days. I definitely recommend going to noip.com and reading the instructions and setting that all up on there, picking your domain name that you'll be using for your node, and then proceeding. If you're not sure if you have a dynamic or a static IP, I would recommend just assuming that you have a dynamic IP and just go ahead and set up your domain name at noip.com. I'm not going to be doing that because I will be using a static IP in this demonstration. But definitely, if you have a dynamic IP, you want to go to noip.com, follow the instructions, set up the NUC client, and get your IP and or your domain name set up and everything working there, and you'll be in great shape to proceed. And then you'll have a domain name that points to your machine. That'll be really cool. Okay. There's a little bit of stuff here about setting up the tool, but of course, at noip.com you'll find more information. The next step here is about setting up port forwarding in your router. What happens here is that basically, if you imagine to yourself that you are, your house, right, is your IP address. Like, it's your street address, it's it's your IP address to your house. And your router, you know, the IP address goes to your router. But to enter your house, you have to go in through a door, or I guess you could go through a window, hopefully not a wall. And each one of those entryways, you could consider those being a port, right? So you have IP address, which leads to your router, and then you have ports. And normally your router will not allow any incoming ports unless they've been requested to be opened by you. So, excuse me. So, in order to do that, you have to say, okay, I want to open up a specific port number, and then you're basically saying I'm going to allow traffic in on that port number, and you have to point it to which machine on your network is going to, receive that traffic. And so this is all set up through your router and through, setting up port forwarding. And the thing is that this is different. The way to go about it is different for every different kind of router that's out there. Every router manufacturer has a different interface, has a different way of setting it up. And while it's mainly the same in theory, going through a step-by-step process, especially in this video, is not really going to help you very much, because my router is not going to look like your router unless we just so happen to have the same router, which unlikely. What I suggest, and what I tell people to do, is if you just go to like YouTube, and you put in the type of router that you have. So for instance, let's just say I have a Linksys router, and I say port forwarding. Okay? And then I hit enter, and you're going to find all of these different tutorials about how to set up port forwarding that lots of people have put together for performing this particular task. So I would suggest doing this. It would help if you put in your model number and not just the name brand like I did. But if you put in the model number, you're going to likely find a video that someone put together that tells you how to go step by step through the process of doing some port forwarding. And it's probably going to be a lot more thorough than something I could do. And it won't be for your particular router if I did it. But for you, this would be the best way to learn about port forwarding and set that up as we go through this process. Okay. Now, you might be wondering what port number that you want to set up in your router. And I believe we have it here as 28967. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be opening up port 28967, and we're going to point it to the machine that you want to use as your node. Now we have here, your node will most likely read offline as there's not a firewall rule set in place. Now what this means is that Windows itself also has a firewall built into it. So you have your router that you're going to be opening up a port to go through the router and be routed to your machine. And then you also have the Windows firewall that's also blocking ports that it doesn't know. So we've created this rule that you can copy. Okay, and we can run this in PowerShell. And it's as simple as right-clicking on this to paste. And there's nothing you have to change. You just hit enter, and it will then create this rule. Now, I forgot to now we're learning something. I forgot to run PowerShell as an administrator. So we'll go through this again. So I'm going to run PowerShell. I will right-click this and say run as administrator. We get the little prompt. And now we'll right-click to put in the paste, and now we'll hit enter. And there we go. The rule was added successfully, and it now will allow traffic into Windows. So we can go ahead and reduce that and proceed with our next steps. Now there's steps here to do this manually. If you don't trust or understand PowerShell and the rules, we do have a walk through here step by step on how to add the rule to the Windows firewall through the GUI. So you can follow through along with that if you'd like. It tells you to open up that specific port 28967 and all of the various rules. And then congratulations, you've set up your port forwarding. Okay. Okay, so in the beginning, we requested an authorization token, and now we are going to download the binary and execute it. And what this does is it will take the authorization token that you received and match it up to your machine specifically, so that only your identity that you have on your machine can be used with this particular authorization token. You can't use the authorization token a second time, and it's only for this specific node. You do get to back your identity up, and you can transfer that identity to another location. Like if you wanted, for instance, to upgrade your node or move your node to another piece of hardware, you could move your entire identity over to that other machine, but you can only use one identity per machine. So it says we're going to download the identity binary, and we're going to do that through PowerShell. Just want to make sure I copy that right. We're going to say select all. No, that doesn't work. I'm telling you. Having mouse challenges today, folks. Okay, let me go back here. All right, I just do it this way. I'm better at the keyboard than I am with the mouse. I don't know why I don't just stick with the keyboard. Let's try it again with the mouse. Come on, mousey. See, it just doesn't want to go. It doesn't want to go. Oh, hates me today. Can we go backwards? Come on. Come on, we can do... Oh, there we go. You'll probably have an easier time of that than I did. We need one of those little buttons over here that just says copy. That would be awesome. But we don't, so we'll just move forward. Okay. Now, right now I'm on C Windows System 32. That's not where I want to be in PowerShell, so I'm going to go to C. I set up a folder on C already, and you can too if you want, or any other location, but I just created a C storage folder. And for this demo, I'm going to make a directory off of that and call this Storj 2, because I ran through this once already, and I want to make sure that I'm not overriding things that I already did. I want to make sure I have a clean situation. Okay, so I'm going to paste from what I copied earlier. Go ahead and hit enter. And now it's going to go ahead and download it straight from PowerShell to that location. So we'll wait for that to happen here. And there we go. Now it's done. We'll go ahead and get a directory here. And we have the identity and the identity Windows AMD64exe.zip. Okay. So let's follow along. Okay, create an identity. This can take several hours or days depending on your machine's processing power and luck. So we're going to run this command in PowerShell, and it's going to basically use that identity exe to create our identity in Windows. And like it's saying, it's going to take a bit of time. Now, on this particular machine, I have a lot of resources, so it shouldn't take too long. However, like when I ran this on a Raspberry Pi 3, it took a number of days. That's probably one of the slowest nodes that we could support. So, you know, if you have a Raspberry Pi 3 or a Raspberry Pi 4 and you wanted to do it a little bit quicker, you can run this on your faster machine, like a Windows machine or a Linux machine, etc., and get the identity created, and then transfer that identity over to the slower machine. If you want help with that, I definitely recommend going to our forum, storj.io/forum, and ask for some assistance with that, and people there will be very happy to help you. But for right now, we're going to go ahead and do this in real time, except I will pause the camera at some point here. Let me go ahead and click this. Oop, I'm losing my mouse. Let me go ahead and click this guy. Okay, we've got it copied. Going to open our PowerShell, paste it, and hit enter. So in my case, I had already created a certificate when I had run through this. But at this point, your machine will start processing. And I think we have some examples, yes, where it's going to be running through, and eventually it'll say, found a key with difficulty 36. It will tell you where it saved that identity. And it's going to then tell you to move that to secure storage. Right? So what it's basically saying is that once you've created this identity for your node, right, just like you saw with my error, it's bound to that particular machine. Now, if something happens to that machine, your hard drive goes bad, there's a fire or something, you cannot recreate it. We can't recreate it for you. You can't recreate it. You can only do it once per machine. So you really should, at this step, pause the video and back up from that location where it says to a USB drive or a NAS location or something that you have that you feel is secure, that is where you want to keep that identity file. Now you might be saying, well, you're not going to worry about it, or you're going to do it in a later step or something. Again, I really recommend you just pause the video here and you go ahead and do it, because we have had lots of people that get further down and then they say, oh, you know what, I'm going to upgrade this, I want to move it. They accidentally format something or erase something, and then they don't have the identity. It's spelled out right here where it is. So it's a really good time to just go ahead and go through the step of just taking that identity files, moving them to a storage location, and where you can retrieve it, and and then have it for the future, so that you can restart your node as needed whenever, because you've done the smart thing and you back this up. Okay. Now we're going to authorize the identity, and basically we're going to combine the identity that you had with the string that you got in the email. So I'm not going to do that because I've already set this part of it up through my other thing, but you can just go ahead and copy this PowerShell command, and you'll want to change, when you paste it in, this email character string. Just erase all of that, including the brackets, and paste in what you got in your email, this code. And then go ahead and hit enter, and it will then very quickly combine the two, and say that your identity's been created. We have a step here. We'll go ahead and copy that verifies it. So I'm going to copy that step. Step I can do because I've already done it. And we'll paste that in and hit enter. And we get two numbers, a 3 and a 2. And as it says here, I keep clicking on the wrong screen, I apologize. If you get the 2 and the 3, or 3 and the 2, whatever, however order it is, it worked. If you get something else, you get an error or something, you did one of the steps wrong, and you'll have to go back through it in order to figure out what it is. Or again, join the forum and we'll help you through setting up your identity. But you can definitely go to the documentation.storj.io, dependencies, identity, and read through all of this, and that's what you should be doing. and working through this alongside. But anyway, it's going to explain, again, back up your identity, make sure you have that stored, and then we'll move forward with the installation of the storage node executable. Okay, so we've got the authorization token, we got the identity, you should have set up port forwarding, okay? And then we're going to go to our next step, which says Docker. We're not going to install Docker, though. Docker Toolbox is not supported on Windows because we're not going to do it. We're going to... not doing the Docker install. Hold on. Where did I go wrong here? Yes, CLI install. That's I don't want the CLI install. Let's back up one more. Oh, I'm sorry. All these menus, but you see what I'm doing here. So you'll see we have GUI install for Windows. That's what we're looking for here. You can do the command line interface install and install Docker, but that's not the purpose of this video. For this video, we're just going through the GUI install. So we'll click on that guy. And now we'll go next, the storage node. And we see here, download the Windows MSI installer. So let's click on that. I'm going to save it. It's not very big, so it should download very quickly. Go ahead and open the folder where I saved it at. And we'll go and open it. And we'll run it. Now, if this happens, it depends on, Windows and everything if your rules are set up. But you can click on more info here, and then you can click on run anyway. It's just a warning because, you've downloaded an executable from the internet, and that can be bad. A lot of people out there, don't know necessarily what they're doing with their computer, and they might download something malicious or something. And so, Windows is basically like, it's not a good idea to download executables off the internet and run them. In this case, assuming you're doing everything the right way and going through the right website and everything, it's perfectly safe to download and run this executable on your machine because you know exactly what you're doing. So we're going to go ahead and run anyway. And then we'll go through the steps. We'll say I accept the items in the license agreement. Feel free to read through it if you like. Click next. I'll install it on my C program files. Storage node. Sounds good to me. And I'm going to leave this the way it is because it's going to look for the identity files in the location where they were saved. I'm going to hit next there. And now it's going to ask for your storage payout address. Now, if you've never dealt with storage tokens before, it is a cryptocurrency, and it's a token. And the difference between it and something like Bitcoin is that, let's say with Bitcoin, you want to transfer a little bit of Bitcoin from yourself to like a friend, for instance. So you go to your wallet and you say transfer this amount of Bitcoin over to this wallet address. And then it will charge you a small amount of Bitcoin in order to register that on the Bitcoin network and transfer that fund to your friend. And that's all contained in the Bitcoin itself, in its spec. In order to record your information on the Bitcoin ledger, it's going to charge you a small fee, which goes to the miners in order to pay them for storing that transaction on the Bitcoin network. With storage token, it's actually inside the Ethereum network. Okay, so when if you were to say to yourself, okay, I've earned say 500 storage token, and I would like to send those to an exchange and convert them into a different kind of cryptocurrency like Bitcoin. But I currently have 500 storage coin that I've earned from sharing my data. One thing that you need to be aware of is that because it's on the Ethereum network, you'll need to have a little bit of Ethereum in your wallet. This is because when you transfer the storage coin through the Ethereum network, you have to pay the Ethereum network some Ethereum to pay for the transaction. So just like with Bitcoin, when you paid Bitcoin to do it, here when you want to move the Storj token, you have to pay a little bit of Ethereum. And it's not a lot. Ethereum's not very expensive, but you do need to have some Ethereum in your wallet in order to make the transfer. You do not need the Ethereum in your wallet to receive the storage coin, so you can build it up over time. But if you want to then transfer it to an exchange, to a friend, etc., you're going to need a little bit of Ethereum in your wallet that you're going to then use to move it. Now, it would be outside the scope of this video to walk you through all of the information about how to do all of that and where to go and that sort of thing. If you don't really understand cryptocurrency too much, you know, I'm not going to be able to teach all of that to you today. There's plenty of places out there that you can get help, and of course, you can go to the Storj forum and ask for help, and you know, we'll be glad to point you in the right direction in order to find out more about it. It's, you know, but for most people, it's pretty straightforward. You know, if you ever dealt with one of these ERC20 tokens before in Ethereum, you know, it's just, you'll receive it just like you do anything else. You'll get an Ethereum address to move your storage coin along, and but you'll need to have a little bit of Ethereum in order to pay for the transactions. So once you have your payout address, you'll put it in here, and then you'll hit next. I'm going to pause the video right now and find myself one so I can do it as part of this demonstration. So one second. There, you didn't even know I was gone, did you? Okay, I'm back. So we're going to go ahead and paste this in. And I'm going to click next. Oop. That seems like a weird number. Why are those three dots right there? All right, hold on. Pausing it again. Okay, I was using myotherwallet.com, and when you, if you just copy it off of the screen, it doesn't give you the whole number. It's a security thing, so I had to actually use their copy button to get the full Ethereum address that you see here. So I'm going to go ahead and click next. And then it's going to ask for my email address. So I'm just going to put in knowledge. I cannot type today. At storj.io. It's this keyboard. I don't usually sit at this keyboard, so it's a little bit, my fingers aren't trained on it right now. Okay, so now it's going to be asking me for my IP address and the port that we set up. So in your case, if you used your dynamic, like your NoIP.com, you would put in your domain name. If you were going to use a static IP address, you would put in your static IP address at this point. So in our case, 137, 117, 9943. We'll put in a colon, and we'll put in 28967, which is the one we reserved, which also reminds you of that right here. And we'll click next. And then it's going to say, where do I want to store my data? So I'm going to hit browse, and I did set up a storage data folder previously, but let's make a new one. And I'm going to call this one storage data. Oops. Store 2. I forgot the R. There we go. We're going to use that. Okay. Click next. And again, you have to use at least 500 gigabytes. I'm going to allocate exactly 500 here, so I'm going to say 0.5. I do recommend leaving a little bit of extra room on your hard drive because while storage tries to keep your storage underneath the maximum, there are times when data is deleted because the customer might delete the data, or maybe they didn't pay their bill or something, and that data goes, it's held for about a week, and we don't want to have that take away from new storage that comes in on your node. So that's not counted as part of that allocation. So you may have it go over a little bit depending on, how much data that you had that happened to be erased and that you were holding for a week. So just make sure that you have a decent size buffer so that you can handle any overages, because if you run out of space on your drive, that can cause corruption and cause some issues. We do try and find some balance here in order for you to know how much data is being used, and so you can make optimal use of your drive. But there are some trade-offs that we look at all the time in order for you to make to earn the most revenue, and at the same time be flexible about the drive space. So in this case, just recommend keeping some gigabytes extra on your drive so that you can fit data that may have been deleted. So in this case, I'm going to say 0.05, which is 500 gigabyte. Hit next, and then install. Okay. Now this is installed, and if everything was set up right, it also turned your node on, and it also installed the dashboard. So right now we're going to go ahead and click Finish. And we can see that we have our storage node stats. We are online, and we're already transferring a little bit of data back and forth. We have our node ID up here at the top, and you can also see a range of satellites that will get filled in over time. Now, I do want to point out that inside this dashboard, when you're initially starting your node off, there's a few things you should be aware of. First of all, satellites have to vet your node. And what that basically means is that they're going to be talking to your node, but they're going to be asking for some challenge responses for a while. And some satellites can take a number of days before they accept your node as being online. This is sort of designed to stop churn from somebody just starting up 1,000 nodes or whatever and dropping off 1,000 nodes. It's a way of sort of saying, is your node reliable? Are you actually going to stay online? Are you just playing around? That sort of thing. So it's not necessarily going to accept you right away, but the longer you keep your node on, the increase in data that you'll start to store as these satellites begin to trust your node. The other thing is that initially I recommend that you check on this every so often to make sure that you don't run into any problems or issues. If you see your status has gone offline, you're going to want to check your logs, etc. And we will go over that step. Now, while this is running, one thing I wanted to show you is that you might be asking, like, where is this, or how do I know that it's running, etc. So if you go in here and you go to Services into Windows, and if you scroll down to Storage, you'll see that you have a node, storage that's running. It's set to automatically start when Windows starts. And you have an updater. So it'll update to the most recent version and also be running. And you can stop the updater if you wanted to do updates manually. We don't recommend that, but you can if you're one of those people that's like, I only want to update my node myself because I want to know what's going on. We totally understand privacy with storage. That's part of the whole process. So if that's not something you feel trustworthy in, you can stop that, disable it, etc., and then handle performing your upgrades yourself. But otherwise, that's how you know that it's running. And also, through the dashboard, if we refresh this, we'll see that, we have some bandwidth. Now, it's saying that I've used 2.77 terabyte hours, right? Which is how much data that I've stored over the month. But in reality, I haven't actually spent any time doing it. That's just because it's new. It hasn't really done all the math on this properly yet. It will clear itself up over time. Okay, so now you might be asking yourself, well, okay, this is really cool, but what happens if I'm having problems, or what if I have questions, etc. So we've gone through this whole installation process. And then, in our documentation, there is a storage node dashboard that you can fire off here, which is that website that we just looked at, so that you can always find it in Windows when you want to look at your stats. You can also open it directly by firing off this command and bookmarking it or whatever in your browser, or from a different device on your local network. There's also instructions on how to set this up for various NAS devices. We won't be going through that, but we do have the ability to do that through Docker, etc. Now, I do recommend that you go to the documentation.storj.io and click on Facts. And you're going to find all kinds of great information here about how to do all sorts of fun things in order to check your logs and answer many of the earlier questions that you might have. Talks about escrow, talks about how come you're not getting more data, how come I'm not using all my bandwidth and storage, etc. And it goes on and on. But the one thing we want to look at here is checking the logs, and we do have a rather simple command here. I'm going to copy it, paste it, and this is going to show me the last 20 entries in my logs. And so I'm going to hit enter. Let me expand that to full screen. And it's showing you in real time what's been going on. So, little pieces are being uploaded, upload started, etc. And, you're going to see variations of this. You're also going to see some, depending on how fast your node is, you will see some errors like, this upload canceled. This isn't a problem. What happens is that when a node is transferring data from one location to another, or a user is uploading data or downloading data, it will be using multiple nodes at the same time in order to perform that task. And if your node is the fastest node, you're going to get the data, or you're going to send the data. But if your node is not the fastest node, then you're not going to get it in this case. And a lot of that has to do with how far away that person is, as well as the speed of your machine and your speed of your internet and all of that sort of thing. But even if you have a slow device, like I do run a Pi 3, I do end up getting a fairly good size amount of data on that Pi 3. Now, would I get more data if I had a Pi 4 or if I had a Windows PC, etc.? Yes, probably. But it's just to say that you can still get data on slower machines. You're just going to have more canceled transfers because your node wasn't the fastest when it was competing for storage. But overall, depending on how far away somebody is from you and where you are regionally, odds are very good that you're going to get some data over time. Okay, and so, if you don't see this sort of thing and you start to see errors and other problems, again, I do recommend that you go to this storj.io/forum, join the forums there. You can dump your logs, you can show people what's going on. We'll help you through it, and we'll get you up to speed very quickly, and then you can get your payout once a month on the data that you've stored. So, hopefully this is all worked out, and welcome to Storj. And, look for future videos from us in order to learn about changes as well as new tools and examples. Thank you very much, and have a great day.